Hello, good morning, and welcome to this Dawn Busters Taste Challenge. We have from 1968, the Northern Lights. The Northern Lights. Shh. Look at the Northern Lights. This is sold in Louisville, Kentucky by Barton Imports. The competitor is Canadian Limited, which is bottled. It doesn't flash with the Northern Lights, but this is bottled in Owensboro, Kentucky by Fleischmann Distilling Company. Introduced in 1972, introduced in 1968, 4 years earlier. Maxwell. Hello, Ron. Hello to you, Maxwell, in the Russian Federation, Russia. Fleischmann Distilling is owned by Sazerac Company today. Okay, they got bought out years ago. They're owned by Sazerac. Barton Imports is owned by Sazerac. They were bought out years ago by Sazerac. Okay, so these are two divisions of the Sazerac Company. Just like in Frankfort, Kentucky, you have Buffalo Trace Distilling, owned by Sazerac. In Bardstown, Kentucky, sorry, I couldn't think for a moment. Bardstown, Kentucky, you have Barton 1792 Distillery, owned by Sazerac. Then they have that one in Lewiston, Maine. There's a distilling company in Virginia that they own. Sazerac Canada, they have a distillery there. So they have contracts. I don't know if they own any distilleries, but they might. But they have contracts at least for production with Ireland, because they own Paddy's, that brand, or they at least handle that brand, and they own and they do a lot of Scotch brands and a lot of tequila. Now, whether they own distilleries for tequila, I don't know, but they certainly import many brands. Probably just contracts. A lot of these companies just make contracts, and this own the brands. But Sazerac actually has their own distilleries. Okay, and then they have the Sazerac House in New Orleans, which opened last year. That's where their headquarters are. Well, you can't go to the headquarters. I mean, I guess if they invite you to go up there and talk to them about business. But in the first 3 floors of the building, there's the museum, the Sazerac. It's an interactive cocktail museum where you can do a self-guided tour. Some of the people will help you if you have questions, and they do mixed drinks, give you samples of mixed drinks. And of course, at the end, there's a gift shop, and you can, well, buy gifts, like a $5,000 bottle of 50-year-old Scotch whiskey, if you want to get that. All right. So here we go. The Northern Lights. I think this is going to be a real challenge. If you watched Fandango Friday last night, I got it wrong. First time I failed. I did the Northern Lights versus Canadian Hunter, and I could not tell them apart. There were differences. They were minimal, but the differences were not enough to where I could tell one from the other, and I failed the first time. So my determination there was just shop price. And in my case, Canadian Hunter's cheaper. I can get it for $8.99 a bottle, whereas the Northern Lights would be about $1 more. Not a big difference, but still a difference. But if the price is the same, Canadian Hunter and the Northern Lights, just get whatever one you like better, as far as like this one has a prettier label, because otherwise you're getting basically the same type thing. It's so close. Canadian Limited at Walmart is about $1 cheaper per the handle bottle, I think. So there is a slight price difference. It isn't much. So if I go to Walmart, I can get Canadian Limited, regular size glass bottle, or the big plastic. or the Northern Lights, but only the big plastic bottle for whatever reason at Walmart. Okay. Oh. At Mathern's, they have Canadian Limited in either size, glass or the plastic, and they do not sell the Northern Lights. Well, you know, Mathern's is a much smaller store. They only have limited space, so they can offer a few. You know, each style of liquor, they'll offer a few samples. We have, you know, a small selection of this, small selection of that, and if you request something, they'll bring it in. But there's just only so much room they have in that relatively small liquor area, whereas Walmart has almost unlimited space. They just keep expanding the liquor section, and so that's why you have multiple offerings. They're both gold. There is no color difference. So I won't have to worry about glancing at one and getting tipped off on the color. The price is about the same, really, so that doesn't matter. I just got a comment this morning. Somebody watched my Canadian Limited solo review, and he was saying, oh, that stuff's terrible. This guy thinks it's good. What's wrong with him? You need to drink something good like Jack Daniels or Jim Beam. And I said, well, I'm sorry you don't like it, but I appreciate you watching the video. Thank you. You know, I don't know what else to say. I can only give you what I think about the products. You know, I'm not going to play to the viewer in the sense that I'm going to change scores to make the channel more successful. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, let me just do the best stuff and then make sure it goes along what people want. I can't do that. Not in good conscience. So, you know, this channel, I do the expensive beers and the really cheap ones, and I do the expensive whiskeys coming up. At least I've done some like Blanton's and the really cheap ones, and the flavored beers, flavored malt beverages, the wine. I haven't really done expensive wine, but I mean, I would if in theory. So that's just what I do. Now, other people have different approaches with their channel. I know some channels, they only review the best beers, like $5, $6 a bottle. And it's really hard to get stuff that I've never even heard of. And so they're usually saying, oh, this is dynamite. It's great. You know, well, of course it's dynamite and great. It better be. It's $6, $7. And sometimes they'll have duds. Like this one is $6 a bottle. It's not even that good, or a can, which you will run across from time to time. But that's what they want to do on their channel. And it's fine with me. I don't ever watch the videos really because I never heard of these beers. And I don't watch videos for beers I've never had. I can't relate to it. There's so many beers. The whole thing is atomized. It's like taking a bottle of perfume, you know, with the spray, and you spray it, and then it sprays everywhere. That's how the beer world is now. So it's not like 20 years ago when they had some specialty beers, but everybody else had probably had them, and you could talk about it. Now it's so fractured. Are they Canadian whiskeys in the way that they're blended with bulk grain alcohol, says EKC. Hey, thanks for watching, EKC. Yes. Just like Scotch, blended Scotch and blended Irish whiskey and blended American whiskey, you've got, and I was talking to James P. Madonna last night about that, you've got your body, the bulk. The bulk is the grain whiskeys, grain spirits. In the United States, they call it grain neutral spirits. In Canada, they say grain whiskey. But actually, if you look at the construction notes for Black Velvet whiskey, you know, they talk about how they create that whiskey. These are long PDF files. It takes a lot of time to read them. They say that they use grain neutral spirits. That's what they call it. All right. So I don't know why they would lie. Why would you make that up? Of course, everything is subjective. I like some Canadian whiskeys that people say are terrible, but I like them. Okay, right. That's how it works. Just because you hate something doesn't make it universally bad. You know, some people say, I hate Westerns. I can't stand watching a movie that's a Western. And they have a very definitive, selfish view of the world. So they'll say, well, I don't like Westerns, so Westerns are bad. And anybody that likes Westerns is stupid. And it's a horrible genre. And you're a fool to watch it. You know, that kind of like totalitarian mindset, which is fine if you're talking about movies because no one even really cares what you're saying. But some of these people become politicians and run governments, you know what I'm saying? And they want to use the power of government to control your thinking according to what they want. And it's not even based on morals, it's based on capricious madness, you know. Okay, well, anyway. This smells like flavored Canadian whiskey. So you were saying, yeah, they use the bulk whiskey, and then the flavors coming from, it doesn't matter whether it's Scotch or it could be a flavored malt beverage. The flavor is not going to come from the body. All right. The body's just like the foundation, which might be 80% of the product. The flavor is going to come from that 25 to 20% malt whiskey, wheat whiskey, rye whiskey, and in Canada's sense or case, in blended American whiskey too, sherry, blending sherry, or plum wine, or rum, or brandy, or even American bourbon. That's what they would use, see? And so Scotch, if you drink a Johnny Walker Red Label or Chivas Regal, the flavor is not going to come from the grain whiskeys. They're designed to not have flavor, really. Not much, just very subtle, slight flavors in a room. They're designed to have to carry the body. The flavor is going to come from the single malts. And it could be highly smoky, not so smoky, very sweet, very fruity, not so fruity. And the master blender has to put all that together and come out with it being consistent. And same thing with these. These are cheap. Okay, we know that. But the master blender in Canada's got to have that done. I'm sure it's more like an algorithm, like a science than an art. You know what I mean? But they've got that template. And it's got to follow that because everybody that buys Canadian Limited, they want it to be the same. They want it to always be the same. And when coming up next is Rich and Rare tomorrow, I plan on doing that. And Rich and Rare is one of the top 20 selling whiskeys in the United States. And that's the truth. I'm talking about of all whiskey, not Canadian. I mean, Canadian Limited is one of the top selling Canadian whiskeys, but I'm talking about of all whiskey brands, doesn't matter what. Rich and Rare is number 19. And people, you say, why did they drink that? Well, it doesn't matter why. But they want it to taste the same every time. You know what I'm saying? There's something to be said for consistency. They don't want to hear an excuse like, well, it was a bad batch. We're artists. That works in the craft beer world. You know, we're artists and it was a bad batch. Fine. But in the mass production world, that doesn't fly. That's why Donald Trump was saying he doesn't like to eat at mom and pop restaurants, you know, privately owned restaurants, because he finds that their sanitation standards are questionable and their consistency is not good. He said he likes McDonald's because they have more strict protocols for hygiene and quality control. I worked at a fast food restaurant from 1987 to 91, Taco Bell. And I did not have any horror stories to tell about. It was a corporate owned place and it was back when they were owned by Pepsi and they were very strict. I mean, you could get fired quick over there, which I liked. I liked the concept. They will fire you if you're a fool. And with no kind of compassion. And it was sanitary. They would clean everything with hot water and special Pepsi procured cleaning agents. And like the manager told me, and he got fired eventually for foolishness, getting into a conflict with another manager. That's another story. But he said if that water is not scalding your hands, it's not hot enough. He said you should have to almost have damage to your nerves and your skin to wash these dishes. That's how hot I want it to be. And that was really what they were saying. Now, my hands are red all the time now. I think that's from that. I think I did get damaged from like that. But the food was clean. Everything was clean in there. Clean. They were like fanatics about cleanliness. Now, I don't know about now, but interesting. I didn't know they used to use other things than straight grain alcohol to make blends. They use many things, yes, many, but they all have to be barrel aged in wood. If you read the Canadian law, it has to be barrel aged. Can't just be some like, I mean, you can use natural flavors like flavorings and food coloring and all that. You can use caramel color here, but then it would be a liqueur, you see, and it couldn't be but like 35% alcohol, couldn't be 40%. But anyway, on with the show. These are actual whiskeys, not liqueurs. I mean, you know, it tastes like the same old show. I could say this every day for another year. It would be the same thing. The plum wine, the white rum, the sugar, the candy, a lot of corn, sweet corn, like whole kernel sweet corn. I mean, you get corn on the cob, the sweet corn, you eat it. You know, that's what it tastes like. But it's pulverized. I had corn for breakfast, grits with corned beef hash mixed in. There's not much else to say. That's what it is. It's corn whiskey. You say, you mean like bourbon? In a lot of ways, like bourbon. In other ways, not like bourbon. But if you did a double bubble map, you know, a map, all the Canadian whiskey characteristics here and all the bourbon characteristics here, and then you put another bubble in the middle and you listed all the common elements, you would notice there'd be a lot of crossover. Wouldn't be universally the same, of course, but there would be crossover. And then you could put on the other side differences out like a thinking map. Call it a thinking map. Then you'd see that we used to do that in high school. We took training on thinking maps, and I would use those to teach like World War II and things like that. And the students, we would draw them out on those smart boards, you know, those technological boards, and then they would draw them in their notebooks, and that would help them to understand. We do thinking maps. Very helpful. You could do that with this. What are the differences here? Maybe, and it's questionable to the extreme, but maybe the one here in my right hand could be to your left because you're opposite of me. Maybe this has a little more rye. And Sazerac is known for kind of going overboard, if you want to call that, on rye. They tend to have a heavy hand on rye, which some people like, other people can't stand. It doesn't really matter to me either way. This one seems to have a little more rye spice, so they might be using more rye whiskey. They call it rye high wine. Rye high wine is a special type of super high proof whiskey. It's not designed to drink. They don't sell it, but they use it to add to blended whiskey to give it flavor. They call it rye high wine. It's not a wine, it's a whiskey. And they use corn, high wine, wheat, etc. High wine, they call it. That's where I learned that from Black Velvet. They had some great PDF files on like education about how they build it. And they're using the same principles with some variations of when it goes in a barrel, how it's, when they blend it, such as that. Yeah. This one here does not have that noticeable rye kick. It has some to give it a little spice, but it's not as heavy. So let me think. Which one of these tended to have a higher rye profile? They both taste fine, and you know, they're not excellent really. They're just like good, I guess. Some people would say average. I don't see why anybody would say it's a D though. Of course, my friend David did, but he didn't give it much chance. I think I remember the Canadian Limited having a little more rye note, but it's so close that I'm just going to say pick 'em. You know what I mean? Like in the gambling world, when you read the latest line, the betting line in the newspaper, sometimes like they'll say San Francisco 7.5 point favorites over Green Bay, but sometimes they're so close they just say pick 'em. It's even money, so it's even money. So just make your pick, and we'll see, because it's too close to call. And I would say this is even, but I do think this is the Canadian, the Northern Lights, by just the virtue of it's a slightly less rye note and a little more candy. But like, remember, I'm saying this is a tie. There's no winner here. Okay. I'm just trying to see if I can tell apart, and that's iffy. It is the Northern Lights. Okay, so good. I have almost a perfect record. I got it wrong once. The only big difference here is a little higher rye note. So if you want a Canadian whiskey, it's a little more peppery. The Limited will work. If you prefer one that's sweeter, more sugary, like alcohol candy, then the Northern Lights will work. Do they have premium variations of these? Could you go into a liquor store and find the Northern Lights Reserve, 12-year aged? Or you could, because Sazerac has a lot of brands that they don't list. You could go and find Canadian Limited bourbon mash or something. You need to just do strange things that they don't feature on their website. That's why you got to literally and physically go to these liquor stores and look around and take your time. When I go to Savannah Discount, they get paranoid, like, how you doing, boss? You know, I'm sure they worry about crime or whatever. So people shoplifting. So they, as soon as you walk in, how's it going? They're letting you know I'm watching you, you know. I'll say, hey, you know, I don't act suspicious. I just look around. But the fact that you're looking around gets them freaked out, because they're used to people coming in, buying their favorite whiskey and getting out. Well, they kind of know me now, so they know that I'm browsing and I'm looking, and almost certainly I'm going to buy something. So, but when you're not known to them and you do that, they get like, what are you up to? Like, what's the story here? Because there's a lot of traffic in that store, in and out, in and out, in and out. And they got to watch it, you know. So can't blame them these days. Which one do I prefer? I don't prefer one over the other. I have no preference, really. Would I buy them again? Not really, because of the fact that there's so many other things I want to try. I don't drink whiskey or any liquor as a habit, like to drink. What I mean is, if I'm drinking whiskey, it's always going to be on camera. You know what I'm saying? I only use it for review purposes. I have no real interest in drinking it otherwise. Now, that might sound crazy. Like, you say, well, so you do whiskey reviews, but you don't actually drink it as a pleasure or normal life pattern or experience. You're right. I don't. But then why would I need to? You know, did you notice how many reviews I'm doing a week? So why would I? It's almost like I'm doing it through that, but I don't. If I stopped doing whiskey reviews and taste challenges, I would never drink it. Now, that's the truth. I just wouldn't. I'd drink beer. I would drink wine every day, a little bit as my juice, but I don't. Most people that do that, they drink whiskey all the time. You know, that's what they do, which I'm not judging them, because that's their business. I don't tell people what to do in their business. I wouldn't buy them again, because there's so many other brands I'd like to buy and try. Now, I do like to taste these things. My main interest in whiskey and all is to taste it, just to see what it tastes like. Oh, this tastes like that, blah, 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 and this tastes like that, and see how they compare one to another. That's really the air. And like beer, wine, and liquor, I just like studying brands, the history of the brands. And, you know, that's my attitude about it. But Hans says, you do it for fun. Exactly. Yeah, it's a hobby. It's not like a religion. Some people do video review channels. It's like their religion. And they're very hostile and volatile. And then some are real sickening. Like, they won't answer comments. I just can't. I'll never leave comments. I'll watch some of them sometimes just to see what they say, because it's interesting. But you can leave a comment. They won't answer you. And some people tell me they just don't like you. Oh, yeah? Well, look at their videos and notice something. You'll notice a pattern. They don't answer anybody's comments. But that's their business. I don't even care. I do it to try to talk to people. It's fun to talk to people about this, because most of my friends and family have no interest in liquor whatsoever, aside from getting drunk, if they drink at all, you know. So the internet allows me to talk to people, and then I've met people that they have the same interest, like they like to taste things and talk about it. You know, it's not important. It's a hobby. Hobbies are, they give you pleasure in life. You enjoy them, like comic books. They're not important. It's not important to have comic books, okay? But it's, I like looking at the artwork and how the things change, but you know, it's not important. Okay, Joe Biden's dentures. This is my favorite beer review channel by far, entertaining and informative. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate all the fans. The viewers, whatever you want to call them. There's fans, I guess. They watch the channel. I got channels I watch. You know, I always watch Jean-Pierre when he does beers I've had. All right, so that's it for this one. It's a tie. Don't go run out and buy these. You know, if you happen to stumble across and you want to spend a few dollars behind them, you probably like it. If you're not too, you know, picky. If you're real picky, you know, you're going to hate them. But you have a right to be picky too, don't you know? Thanks, and y'all have a good Saturday.